Today's edition of Mac Voices is supported by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like Mac Voices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for Mac Voices Magazine on Flipboard. And by the Mac Voices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter to stay up to date on all the Mac Voices news. Subscribe from our front page or at macvoices.com/newsletter. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, it's time again to visit with a representative of Drobo, but it's a representative you know and love, and we talked to him with his Drobo hat on and without his Drobo hat on, Mr. Mark Fuccio. Mark, it's good to have you back as always.
Hi, Chuck. It's always great to join and have a great discussion. We cover lots of interesting topics and interesting ground.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is going to be one of my favorite kind of interviews because it's a product introduction interview, and it is about a brand new Drobo, which, as I've said, folks, on the show a million times, you're sick of hearing it, but I have never lost any data in a Drobo, and I can't say that about pretty much any other storage solution. So whenever I see Drobo coming out with something new, my ears perk up and I pay attention. I hope you do too. So, Mark, we have a new Drobo. What is it, and what's going to make it special? Okay,
so the product is called Drobo 5C. It's a 5-bay USB-C connected Drobo. So we're calling it internally the world's first 64 terabyte USB-C storage array. And let's break that down. So part of it goes back to Drobo. So it has the same degree of data protection that people know and love. You can protect against single hard drive failure or two hard drive failures. It does a lot in the background to scrub data, protect against disk corruption and things like that. What this does is by focusing on 64 terabytes, that's an enormous volume, and it seems as big now to current systems as maybe Drobo's 2 or 16 terabyte volume did back when it was first launched about 9 years ago. The point here is that we live in a digital age, and if it's a bad photo we take or a 69-cent song that we buy, our digital stuff is part of our memories. We want to keep it forever. So this is the 9th year Drobo has of demonstrating its commitment to protecting people's important data forever. And of this, the company needed to invent its BeyondRAID technology because in order to protect it forever, if you think about that, that's a long time. That goes out quite a ways. So as you collect more stuff, it was important that the company have this easy way that the capacity could expand. So right now, the single volume size is 64 terabytes. If we fast forward in the future, there may be 12. Actually, you need more than that. If we fast forward to say when there's 15 terabyte volume, terabyte drives available, you would pop that into this Drobo, and then you would see two 64 terabyte volumes. So basically, the sky is the limit in terms of its storage capacity and how it will grow and feed into people's collecting all sorts of digital stuff.
And we've said this too so many times, Mark. We all collect more digital stuff. I'm shooting more and more video, and now with the new iPhone, I'm shooting 4K video, which takes up a lot of space. The newer the cameras, the bigger the file size seem to get. Now the new iPhone gives you a version of RAW to shoot in, and if you're a photographer, you're going to want to preserve those files because they're a bit more flexible in how they can be edited, and it all adds up to more and more and more storage.
That's true. And the other part of the good news about this product is it has an MSRP in the United States of $349. So, we think this is destined for the mass market. If people look at what it costs, say, to buy an external USB drive, drives are anywhere, say, $70 to $250, depending on capacity. A good enclosure is going to be about $80. So For $80, that's $400 for just basically piles of metal and power supplies and cords, and you get dumb drives. With Drobo, you have all of its intelligence and data protection. So we think at $349 list price, it's very, very aggressively priced, and is within the reach of everybody. Certainly anybody, if they have a computer and they've collected data for a while, they'll be able to look at that and really think back to just a couple of years ago when entry-level Drobos were $500, and be really excited and proud to have and own this model.
And I want to go back and just review something you said. $80 a case for a decent case. Yes, folks, you can go and find cheap cases, no question about it. And there's a place and a time for cheap cases. But when it comes to really important data, legacy data, that's not the time for cheap cases. And so you want to make sure you're comparing, sorry, pardon the pun, apples and apples
right.
when you're pricing things out. Mark,
yeah.
why USB-C? We have Drobos that are USB 3 connected. We have the network attached storage Drobos. Why USB-C at this point?
We think USB-C is going to be the way of the future, that it is compatible with the USB 3. Plus, if we look, we start to see, right now Apple has a single Mac, the MacBook, that has a USB-C connector. Some of the PCs that are in the same ultralight form factor are starting to have USB-C connectors as well. So we think that is going to be a move going into the future, as well as Intel has worked with standards bodies and with Apple so that both Thunderbolt and USB-C use the same physical connector. So we think it's a technology that's going to be aggressively in the mainstream over the next 6 to 15 months.
So this is going to be a little more for mass storage. This is not, well, I guess with USB-C speeds, though, you can still do, let's say, some video editing off of it without too much trouble. For most people, now, if you're a pro, you're probably going to want to go and look at something Thunderbolt equipped. But USB-C is still, more than manageable. And in fact, a lot of us are, and me included, whenever I'm editing things off of my my MacBook Pro, it's coming off of USB 3, because I don't even have a USB-C port on there.
Right. So the speeds will be comparable. Depends again on how many drives. The more drives you put in it, you'll have more data movement in parallel. This device will read right around 250 megabytes a second on a sustained basis. So for people who say, well, don't buy Drobo, it's slow, I think they have old memories back to the first introduced model that was USB 2. This is clearly 10 times or more faster than that old model.
And I think you need to set your expectations with which Drobo model you're buying. If you're looking for a really fast drive, then again, and everything, then you want like the 5D, which is a direct connect Thunderbolt. That's really fast. If you want the network attached storage, we have the 5N. Now you have the Drobo 5C, which is USB-C based, so you're going to compromise a little bit on speed, but man, you're getting a great product, and you're getting five bays as opposed to 4. What else do we have here as far as the way this particular Drobo can be used to protect your data?
This Drobo has a capability where you can create a separate dedicated volume. And you can think of this as you're taking that Drobo, you're dividing that massive storage pool into different pieces. So you create a second volume. Maybe you use it for, if you're a Mac user, for doing a bootable backup. If you're a Windows user, there are similar tools you can use to protect your data, your operating system, and your program. So this is a way that you can partition out so that you can have the bulk of the Drobo storing your humongous library of whatever type of video and audio media and photographic media that you have. But you can have that one piece that is dedicated to backing up your system and your hard drive. And even with the advent of the Mac App Store, it still takes a long time to download programs let alone reconfigure any of your settings and passwords and the like. So this gives you the best of both worlds. You have a dedicated volume. You can use it in tools like Carbon Copy Cloner or Super Duper. Boom, make a beautiful bootable backup. The other thing you could do with this is, if you wanted to, you could use one of the whole disk encryption tools. So it's a way you can encrypt it, and you can put whatever your data, your love letters, your tax returns, and no one will know it. No one will be able to read it unless you share the password with them.
Let's go back here a little bit. So this is a dedicated volume that I can set up. Is this a different kind of dedicated volume than what the other Drobos have allowed you to do in the past?
No, the other Drobos have had this capability for roughly the past 18 or 24 months. It's just that given the price point and the expected sale of this into a larger audience, something we want to explicitly highlight as, this is a better way to protect some of your system files. And it's a way to pair off maybe 1 terabyte out of, a 15 terabyte or 20 terabyte system. Take 1 terabyte just to protect your operating system and programs. And the key thing there is, it's about saving time. It's not that you can't reconstruct those programs, but it takes a long time. Whereas if it's a bootable backup, boom, you can copy off of it in 10 to 30 minutes, and you're up and running. I dare anyone to try to download and install your new operating system, download their program files, and then try to reconfigure as rapidly.
So, okay, so just again, to be very clear here. So when I do this with, say, one drive or whatever, then that's not a redundant thing. That's just basically like having a separate drive. It just happens to be in the Drobo enclosure. Is that a correct statement?
It's half correct. That volume will be have all the benefits of the Drobo redundancy. So you can think of if Drobo gives you this big pool of protected storage, here you're taking a certain amount of it and dedicating and saying, I want to use this for this backup volume, or I want to use this and create it for an encrypted hard drive. So to your Mac, your PC, you would see it as a separate drive, but it's something that you can use for maybe a slightly different purpose. Because one thing we hear a lot of people have told us is, Drobo is great. I like Time Machine, but it will grow forever. I want to control that. So I'd like something where I can, put my own backups, as well as I can use it for housing an enormous collection of music and videos and TV shows and the like.
Okay, so to the Mac and to the user, it looks like 2 separate volumes, but to the BeyondRAID technology, it's just still one big thing, and it's doing its redundant protection.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, all right. I'm jumping all around, and I apologize, but things keep occurring to me. From a speed standpoint, a lot of the other Drobos have the ability to add an extra SSD in to make them faster. What do we have that option here with this Drobo?
No, we don't. We had to meet that price point, we had to remove some circuitry and connectors and other electronics and things. So that's not available in this. But if you really need that capability, you can buy up and have higher end, more expensive products in the product line that will give you that capability.
Yeah, and I think that, again, that makes sense, because this is not built to be the fastest Drobo in your collection. It's just meant to be one of the better workhorses in your collection.
Right. Again, five drives, $349, dual disk redundancy, USB-C. I think we're going to sell huge numbers of these, and I think if we meet 9 or 10 years from now, we'll find people who tell us fondly that they bought the USB-C Drobo and it's just been sitting in a shelf in their office, and they never think about it until they run out of space.
And this Drobo is built principally for the spinning, the rotational drives that we're all familiar with. So
That's correct.
We're not going to be sticking 5 SSDs in here, at least not anytime soon, because of the price points.
That's right. I mean, and this is really a bulk storage device.
I wanted to make sure I got back to this too. Since this is a USB-C device, what cable or cables are you shipping with the unit?
That's a good question. So the unit on the back has a USB-C female connector. The cable that it ships with, has a USB-C at one end. On the other side, to connect to your computer, has that little slot, the USB-A, which is compatible with USB 3 and USB 2. We did a lot of soul searching, thinking about what cable to use, and sort of the decision is right now that there's a preponderance of USB devices out there, that this will provide compatibility with all the devices that people are using today, and maybe the rare subset of people who might be using a device that has USB-C. There are connectors that you can go and use, or you can get USB cable that has C connectors at either end. And we'll have to just wait and see. There's a lot of speculation that Apple will come out with Macs with USB-C natively on it. Certainly, that's happening in the Windows world. A year from now, maybe we'll look back and reevaluate if there's a need to change the cable that ships with the system.
So right now, this is going to be compatible with pretty much every Mac out there except the MacBook. And frankly, I think a lot of folks that have purchased the MacBook probably have also invested in some sort of adapter or small USB-C dock to give them USB 2, USB 3 compatibility.
I'm sure they are. I know when I have a MacBook, and we're talking on it now, and when I first set it up, I had to go get that USB-C to USB-A connector so that I could rapidly get data onto the machine. I had to have a USB 3 SSD drive, and it was wonderful. I think we'd still be waiting if we were looking at the prospect of having to transfer it wirelessly. So I think that I think anybody in the Apple world, if they have a MacBook, I'd bet you lunch that they also have one or more USB peripherals that connect to it.
Yeah, it's interesting that this time Apple chose to make the MacBook sort of the leading edge of any kind of interface changes or designs, physical interface changes or designs. And with our luck, by the time that this gets released, Apple may have announced something new or maybe not. But it certainly does seem like USB-C will have a definite place on any new laptops, maybe even desktops going forward.
I certainly think it's a safe bet. I don't see USB going away. And if I were to speculate, I think in the Apple world, to get Thunderbolt, it's higher performance, but it's also a much more expensive solution. The cables, people ask, why is an Apple Thunderbolt cable $50? Well, it is an active cable. It means it has chips at each end that control the signal integrity and signal quality, and that costs money. Whereas USB, it's a passive connector. It's just a connector and cable. So I think that there is going to be a continued need in the market for both higher priced or higher performance and of necessity higher priced storage devices, as well as bulk storage at value based prices for the majority of the market.
So we have 5 bays that we can set up as a big pool of storage, or if we want to, we can shear off a separate volume as an encrypted disk, or as just a time machine backup, or just a clone to backup. We have USB-C connectivity. There's a lot to like here, and we have a $349 price point, which makes it pretty approachable and affordable to anyone. Even if you're just going to go and buy a 2 terabyte drive, a bunch of 3, 4, 5 2 terabyte drives, suddenly you're going to have a pool of storage that you can really use and that is doing that redundancy thing that is so important for your critical photos, videos, all those things.
That's right. And the key point of Drobo is that storage can grow. So if maybe you don't want to spend a lot of money, more than necessary to get, say, 3 terabytes of storage, you can buy Drobo and buy 2-3 terabyte drives. They're about what, $60, $55 a piece. Then as your needs grow, add more drives and put it in. There's no harm, no shame in having unused drive bays. It just means you're set up to grow in the future.
Just to reiterate a little bit too, we're back to that discussion of, well, I could always buy, one of the external drives and then I can upgrade that or I can add to those. But the thing is, you don't have that redundancy, and once those drives become unusable for whatever reason, well, you're kind of the money's wasted. And here, you pop drives out, you pop drives in. You don't even have to turn the Drobo off. You can do it dynamically, and it grows with your storage needs. And so, like you said, if you leave an empty bay, great, you slide it in there. If you find that all your bays are filled with 2 terabytes and you want to upgrade 1 to 3 or 4, just pop one of those out, slide the new drive in, and it does its thing. It's such a great investment, and I'm always surprised that people don't really seem to grasp that this is a device you're not buying for today, tomorrow, next week, next year, but this is one you're buying for the long term.
So everything you said is true. The way I look at it is slightly differently, and that is, it all depends on how much data somebody has. And if all of their data will fit on a single hard drive, then buying a USB drive for use for backup is good enough. In comparison, Drobo is way more than they need, both in capacity as well as it's going to be a much more expensive solution. But so there's a lot of people out there whose data won't fit on a single hard drive, and for those, they're ideal, Drobo customers. And I think by bringing this out at this price point, we've taken something that was more expensive. We made it much more available to many more people.
Okay, Mark. So we have the Drobo 5C USB-C. This is a $349 price point and available when and where?
Okay, so it should be available when this interview goes live, which is Tuesday, October 4th. It's available at drobostore.com online, as well as all of our partner sites, and they're all the famous online e-tailers that everyone knows and loves.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. We were talking before the show a little bit. I know you had some conversation with Ted Landau recently about a Fusion drive challenge that he had, and as I recall, he had formatted a Fusion drive, and that gave him a number of issues. And I've seen a couple things about Fusion drives and the challenges that they face. And these are, folks, if you're not familiar with, the Fusion drives are the hot new thing that were in the most recent couple series of iMacs. Talk a little bit about Fusion drives compared to Drobo and the BeyondRAID, so people maybe understand the benefits of the Drobo, and not that there's anything wrong with the Fusion drives. They just represent some unique compromises and challenges. Okay, yes.
So the Fusion drive was introduced by Apple in 2012 at their June Worldwide Developers Conference. And the idea there is, they take a combination of spinning drive, which has enormous capacity at a low price, relatively lower performance, and then they blend with it SSD drive, so they get a big performance boost. And what Apple did is that year, I think was at 10.8 or 10.9 of OS 10 that they released, they introduced under the hood a new volume manager capability. So what this allowed them to do is to take these two types of storage and combine them together. So to OS 10, it would look like one large drive. And what the volume manager software would do is it would look at how different blocks of data were accessed. So just a quick reminder for your listeners, data is stored on disks and blocks of 4096 bytes each. So if you have files that are bigger than that, you take block number 1, 2, 3, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, at the lowest level, all disk drives look like is, a bunch of blocks that you store stuff in. And that's managed by the file system. And what the volume manager does is it sits underneath the file system and it looks at all these resources of all these block level storage. Now, in the Apple Fusion drive, there are a lot of reports that gives a great benefit. They use the SSD as a cache or as a layer of storage that accelerates both the read and write operations. The problem with it is it's a single device. In other words, it's a single point of failure. Now, in the show of MacVoices where Ted was describing some of his problems, it wasn't clear if the trouble was caused by his partitioning it or if there was some problem that had developed first and then he partitioned it. So I'm not quite sure what the timeline of events were. But certainly his description of taking it to the Apple Store and, they're trying to reconstruct it using command line in a prior version, that sounds consistent with, a lot of the more geeky storage coverage available on the net, where people have described that using the Apple Volume Manager, that has interfaces available in terminal, how you could build your own Fusion drive. So same capability, same guts, but the problem is you have a single point of failure. Now, you asked about some of the Drobo devices because the Drobo 5D and 5DT, as well as some of the network-based storage devices, have capability that you can use SSD. What they do is they use it as a cache, which means it's there, but it's not the only copy of the data. So if something happens in the cache, your data is still protected, on the hard drives. As we get into a little higher end of the product line, systems that are targeted in small business environments, i.e., business environments that don't have IT support, there you can use either 1 or 2 SSD drives. And what Drobo technology will do is if it's a single drive, it will use it purely for performance acceleration. If you have 2 SSDs, then it will be able to use it redundantly so that if one of the SSD fails, you still have a backup copy, so you won't lose data. So this is in comparison with Apple and some of the storage vendors out there have offered drives that are a blend of block SSD and spinning magnetic storage. The whole idea behind that is, let's somehow blend together the fact that, storage per gigabyte is about 4 cents on a hard drive. This tenth of price of an SSD. So let's combine them together so we can get a little bit of the best of both worlds.
And it's a great idea. Correct me if I'm wrong, I see similarities between the concept of that and the concept of the BeyondRAID. It's just that the BeyondRAID is not really targeting the performance aspect. It's targeting the data safety of it. So blending 2 different disks, and of course the BeyondRAID right now doesn't blend with SSDs. It's just blending with hard drives. In some ways, I guess I completely understand why Apple.
Well, no, I'd like to hold you off there because on some of the models like the B810i or the B1200, there if you use a single SSD, it will use it for acceleration. If you use 2 or 3 SSDs, what it will actually do is it will create a sort of a high performance tier of storage, where hot data, the stuff you're reading and writing a lot, that PowerPoint you were working on this morning, or maybe that virtual machine that you had opened, or your Lightroom library, it will be resident in the SSD, so that you get the performance benefits of reading out of SSD. But it's implemented as redundant storage. So if one of those SSD drives, don't lose your data, you have a mirrored or a striped copy. Because on SSD, you can have protection against dual SSD failure as well. So, this is the same idea, but what we're doing is creating a higher level tier of physical storage that has, faster performance characteristics.
Okay, I stand corrected. Thank you. I don't think I realized that about those higher end Drobos. And am I correct in saying that those are targeted? They tend to be more for the data professional or the professional storage levels.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. There's a lot to like here coming from Drobo, as always, Mark, and thank you for talking to us about it. It's exciting to see Drobo moving into different price points, juggling around trying to find the feature set that fits that particular customer properly and get more people involved in protecting their data with Drobo.
Great. So I'd invite any of your customers, if they have questions, they can reach me on Twitter, or they can ask Drobo on Twitter or on Facebook. And there, that's at Drobo, at DROBO, for folks in the Twitter sphere.
Perfect. And I want to reiterate again, folks, I've got more Drobos sitting around here than I'm willing to admit because I'm a bit of a data hoarder, and I have never lost anything in a Drobo, period. Mark, good to see you. We'll do it again soon.
Chuck, thanks for this opportunity. Have a good afternoon.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Go get yourself a Drobo, or at least go and do the research. I think you're going to find it's a better value proposition, and it's a better safety proposition all around. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes, links to subscribe, and to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, the MacVoices blog, the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and on MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard that helps you do more with your Apple tech. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.